Hey, tonight we're exploring something quiet but strange. You lie in bed, the room soft with shadows. Maybe there's a low hum from a distant fan, or the thinnest chorus of crickets outside your window. The world around you is beginning to hush itself, like a blanket being drawn over the day. But your mind, curious as always, is still gently awake. There's no need to rush it. Because tonight, we're going to question the things you've always been told about sleep. The little rules, the morning after warnings, the shoulds and shouldn'ts, the advice from friends, magazines, even doctors, all delivered with good intentions, but rarely examined too closely. Things like never nap, or avoid eating after 8, or you must get 8 hours every night. But what if some of that is wrong? Not just a little wrong, but deeply, elegantly wrong. According to science, you probably won't survive this world unchanged. But that's the point. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you enjoy quiet stories like this. Feel free to share your location and what time it is where you are, if your eyes are still open. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin walking down a memory, soft gravel under your feet, somewhere in the quiet woods of your mind. There's a path that only appears at night, lined with things you were told but never questioned. Bits of advice that stuck to you like dew. You didn't ask where they came from, or who first whispered them into being. But they're here, still echoing. You pass a signpost that says no caffeine after noon. Another says keep your room completely silent. And another still, sleep is only real if it's uninterrupted. They feel familiar, but the deeper into the forest you go, the more those signs seem out of place, almost ceremonial. Like remnants of an old cult, half based in truth, half based in something else entirely. A quietly fascinating fact, many modern sleep recommendations, especially the rigid rules, didn't come from science at all. They emerged from industrial-era productivity ideals, filtered through self-help culture and mass media. In other words, we made them up, then repeated them enough that they felt like truth. You remember hearing your parents say them, maybe your teachers, maybe the voice in your head still does. But tonight, we're going to sit with those voices, not to fight them, just to listen, to question, and maybe to let go of the ones that were never yours to carry. There's something oddly comforting about myth, even when it's wrong. It gives shape to our fears, offers order where chaos might otherwise bloom. But science, like sleep, isn't always orderly. It resists neat bedtime stories, and sometimes it whispers truths that make us uneasy. Here's one: the idea that sleep should always come quickly and stay steady through the night. That's a relatively modern invention. Historically, humans often slept in segments. 2 shorter sleeps with a waking hour or 2 in between, sometimes used for prayer, journaling, even quiet reflection. But that's for later. For now, you're still walking. A breeze moves past you. You notice a faded book hanging from a branch. You open it slowly. The pages are filled with advice in looping cursive, some charming, some contradictory. Drink warm milk. Don't eat at night. Keep your window closed. Let fresh air in. All of it earnest. All of it confusing. And so we ask, if all this advice worked, why are we still so tired? There's a strange tension between what we're told and what we feel, like wearing someone else's coat to bed. It doesn't quite fit, but we assume the problem must be us. That's the eerie part. Not ghosts or shadows or strange dreams, but the quiet pressure we put on ourselves, based on ideas we never asked for. Researchers still wonder if that pressure itself, the expectation to sleep a certain way, is one of the biggest reasons we can't. They call it orthosomnia, a modern phenomenon. It means the anxiety that comes from trying too hard to sleep correctly. Your body wants rest. It knows how. But the mind, it's been flooded with too many instructions. And sometimes, the gentlest thing you can do is pause and wonder if any of them are true. You pass a clearing now. Moonlight spills across a little pond. The surface ripples, but only slightly. It's hard to tell if the ripples are from wind or memory. You think back to the first time you were told to sleep on a schedule. The way it felt like a rule, not a rhythm. The way it didn't always work. But you blamed yourself anyway. But what if your sleep is more like the moon than a machine? Shifting, intuitive, beautiful in its unpredictability. What if the path back to sleep isn't about more control, but less? You sit by the pond for a while, legs crossed, hands warm in your lap. Somewhere far off, a night bird calls. The world does not demand that you sleep right now. It simply welcomes you gently into the possibility of it. That's enough. You wander deeper now, along a path that bends softly beneath your bare feet. It weaves through tall grass and old trees, their branches like long, quiet arms reaching into the sky. The stars overhead feel oddly low tonight, like they're listening. There's no hurry here, just movement, just breath. You come to a clearing where an old sundial rests on a mossy pedestal. The stone is cracked from time, but a carved message remains legible in the moonlight. 8 hours, or else. You stare at it for a while, not entirely sure whether to laugh or bow in reverence. Because there it is, the rule you've likely lived with your whole life. That sacred number. 8. Not 6, not 10. 8. No more, no less. The gold standard of good sleep. You've probably heard it from doctors, from parents, from sleep apps and workplace wellness seminars. Everyone needs 8 hours of sleep. And so, like most people, you try to hit it, even when it's hard, even when your body doesn't cooperate. You lie in bed and watch the clock calculating your failure in real time. If I fall asleep in 10 minutes, I'll still get 7 hours and 40 minutes. If I wake up at this time, I'll be tired all day. It becomes math. It becomes a deadline. It becomes pressure. But here's something the stars might whisper if you ask them gently. There is no universal number. A quietly fascinating fact. Studies show that sleep need varies dramatically between individuals. Some people thrive on 6 hours, others need 9. Even more interesting, some hunter-gatherer tribes untouched by modern schedules average 5.7 to 6.4 hours of sleep a night, and they're fine. No burnout, no coffee dependence, no chronic sleep debt. Their secret? It wasn't the number, it was the rhythm. They didn't force sleep, they followed it. The obsession with 8 emerged during the Industrial Revolution, when factory shifts began to carve days into rigid blocks. The slogan 8 hours labor, 8 hours recreation, 8 hours rest was less a scientific discovery and more a labor demand, a protest chant, and yet it stayed. It became gospel, a bedtime law. You run your fingers along the edge of the sundial. It's warm from memories. And still, part of you wonders, why 8? Why not what your body needs? That's the eerie part, that even something as intimate as rest can be regulated by external rules. The body may whisper, but the clock shouts louder. You remember a night, maybe not long ago, where you woke up after just 5 hours, but you felt okay, clear, balanced, and still you told yourself it wasn't enough because the number said so. But your body isn't a spreadsheet. It's a forest, a river, a shifting sky. And like all natural things, it doesn't move in perfectly measured intervals. Researchers still wonder if the emphasis on total sleep time distracts us from more important signals, like sleep quality or sleep architecture. The subtle choreography of your brain cycling through light, deep, and REM stages. Those waves matter more than the hours on a clock, but they're harder to measure, so we fixate on what's easy to count. 8. You step around the sundial and walk down a slope where moonlight filters through the trees in soft ribbons. The path splits ahead of you. One trail winds toward a wooden cabin, the other leads into fog. You take neither yet. You just stand still and breathe. You imagine what it might be like to unlearn the 8-hour rule, to sleep when you're tired, to nap when you need, to rest in fragments if that's what your body wants. Not as laziness, not as failure, but as restoration on your own terms. It feels radical, doesn't it? And yet it's older than any alarm clock. The wind picks up, and you hear wind chimes somewhere in the distance. Or maybe it's just your mind rearranging sound into beauty. You start to walk again, this time with less concern for where the trail leads. You think about your own rhythms, the times when your body felt most alive, most alert, most calm. Were they ever at the right time? Or have you always known deep down that your timing is your own? Here's a quiet truth. The healthiest sleepers aren't necessarily the ones who get 8 hours every night. They're the ones who don't worry when they don't. They trust that the body will catch up, that rest is not earned, it's a need, and needs ebb and flow. You reach a bench carved from a fallen tree. You sit for a moment feeling the shape of it, worn smooth by time and weather. Someone once carved something into the wood, barely visible now. Listen to the tired, not the timer. You don't have to be a rebel. You don't have to throw away the clock entirely. But maybe, just maybe, you can stop letting it own your night. That thought lingers with you as your eyes begin to feel a little heavier. Not because the hour demands it, but because your body is ready. The path narrows now, winding like a sleepy river through mossy earth and pale wildflowers that seem to glow just slightly in the dark. Your footsteps fall quietly, padding through leaves and pine needles. Overhead, the moon follows you like a patient guardian, curious and calm. You feel something warm in the air, a familiar scent, faintly sweet, maybe buttery. It reminds you of toast or a corner bakery at night. Your stomach hums gently, not in hunger, exactly, but in memory. You come upon a tiny wooden house nestled under the branches of a leaning tree. A low golden light flickers through the window. The door is already open. And inside, a kitchen. But not just any kitchen. It's the kind you find in dreams, where everything feels a little older, a little softer, as though it was built by hand and remembered with love. There's a kettle warming on the stove, a plate of something warm, toast or perhaps rice porridge, still steaming gently. Sits at a small table by the window. You step inside. The warmth wraps around you. This is where we talk about the rule you've heard 1,000 times. Never eat before bed. It sounds wise, logical even. You've been told that nighttime snacks disrupt digestion, spike blood sugar, lead to weight gain, disturb your sleep. And maybe sometimes that's true. But not always. Because like most rules whispered to sleepy minds, this one leaves out the nuance. The story. The people it doesn't work for. A quietly fascinating fact. New studies suggest that a small carbohydrate-based snack before bed may actually improve sleep for certain people, particularly those prone to nighttime anxiety, low blood sugar, or insomnia. It stabilizes glucose, signals serotonin, and creates a sense of comfort that helps the body exhale. You take a seat by the window, your fingertips warming around a cup of something herbal. Through the glass, you can see the moonlit trail you came from, winding, quiet, fading slowly into fog. You think of all the nights you lay in bed with your stomach fluttering, not empty, exactly, but unsettled, and you didn't eat because you were told not to. You let the discomfort grow, confusing it with discipline. You followed the advice, and still, you didn't sleep. What if your body wasn't trying to sabotage you? What if it was asking, softly, for nourishment? The science isn't settled. Researchers still wonder if it's the food itself or the ritual of the food. The warmth, the familiar scent, the way it grounds the nervous system and reminds the body it's safe. There's something eerie, almost sacred, about eating late at night. It breaks the rules of day and night. It softens the divide. There's no audience, no performance, just you. And maybe that's what makes it healing. You reach for the toast on the plate. It's warm, soft, with a thin layer of butter melting into it. You take a bite, and nothing bad happens. The ceiling doesn't collapse. You don't wake up heavier or haunted. The world continues, but your body feels acknowledged. There are places in the world where night eating is part of culture, not a deviation, but a norm. In Spain, dinner often happens at 9 or 10 p.m. In parts of Southeast Asia, late-night food stalls bustle until the early hours. And somehow, those people sleep too. We've come to believe that discipline means deprivation. But the body isn't a machine waiting for fuel windows. It's a creature of rhythm, feedback, and feeling. Sometimes, what helps you sleep isn't what stops your stomach, but what soothes it. You recall an old tradition, warm milk with honey, a grandmother's voice saying, just a little before bed so your dreams stay sweet. You wonder if that advice was more profound than modern rules. If maybe, they were onto something. The hum of the kettle deepens. Outside, fog begins to spill across the ground like quiet waves. You take another bite, then a sip, and the lines between hunger and comfort blur. Here's a question. How much of your sleep struggle is rooted in obedience to advice that never came from your body? You imagine waking in the middle of the night, slightly restless. Instead of panicking, instead of forcing your eyes closed, you get up. Light a candle. Warm a bowl of rice. Sit in stillness. Let your body reset, not with force, but kindness. It's not a failure. It's a rhythm, one our ancestors may have known far better than we do. The door creaks softly, reminding you that it's time to continue. You stand, leaving the last bite on the plate. You feel calm now, not heavy, not sleepy yet, but slower, as though your breath and your blood have agreed to stop rushing for a while. As you step back into the night, the cold greets you again, but it doesn't sting. You've brought the warmth with you. And somewhere deep in your belly, not just in your stomach, but your being, you feel a gentle fullness, not of food alone, but of trust. You didn't follow a rule tonight. You followed a whisper. You step back into the night, and the path feels different now. Not colder exactly, but clearer. The fog has lifted just a little, as if something unspoken was released when you gave yourself permission to be comforted. The moon floats quietly above the treetops, casting silver shapes across the ground. Your breath curls in front of you. The air has a certain bite to it now, that sharp edge of late night, where warmth becomes a luxury. You follow a curve in the trail until you reach a clearing with a strange little cottage, all stone and steam and gentle light glowing from the cracks between window shutters. There's something curious about it. Smoke rises softly from the chimney, and every stone of its wall is warm to the touch. As you enter, you realize this place is both hot and cold. A paradox. The air is crisp, almost chilly, but the floors are heated, and the blankets, thick, heavy, comforting, are folded neatly beside a low bed. On a nearby hook, a pair of wool socks. You sit on the edge of the bed and slip them on. The warmth spreads instantly, a gentle hug around your feet that seems to travel upward, sending quiet signals through the rest of your body. Signals that say, it's okay to let go now. You've heard it before. Keep your room cool for better sleep. And that one, oddly enough, is true. But like most truths, it hides a secret beneath its surface. A quietly fascinating fact. Research has shown that cool ambient temperature combined with warm extremities, especially the hands and feet, helps the body transition into sleep faster and more deeply. It's not about being cold. It's about creating a gradient, a warm center with a cooler outer shell. Your body, like the earth, has thermal tides. When you're ready for sleep, your core temperature begins to drop, signaling the brain to begin releasing melatonin. But the heat has to go somewhere. It radiates out through your palms, your soles, your face. That's why warming your feet can speed up the cooling of your core. It sounds strange, doesn't it? To warm up in order to cool down. But the body is full of these beautiful contradictions. You lie back now, tucked under a soft, heavy blanket. The room is quiet but not silent. A faint crackle from the fireplace, the ticking of something unseen. Your feet are cozy. Your neck is cool. You feel aligned. And yet you remember the nights where you tossed and turned under thick covers, too hot but reluctant to uncover. Or the winters where you piled on socks out of habit, only to kick them off in your sleep. Maybe nobody told you that comfort is not just warmth, but balance. The eerie detail here is that sleep researchers once observed that insomniacs tend to have colder feet at bedtime. Not just as a symptom, but potentially as a cause. Their bodies weren't releasing heat properly. The transition into sleep was blocked. And yet, few people talk about this. Few people suggest putting on socks as a serious strategy. It seems too quaint, too simple. But sometimes the oldest comforts are the most powerful. You stare at the ceiling, thinking about how sleep is often described as a surrender, a letting go. But it's also a migration, a slow journey inward where your body retreats to its center. In that journey, the extremities are messengers. They signal the nervous system that it's safe to slow down, that the edges of the world have been warmed. There's something almost spiritual about it, this act of heating your feet before rest, as if you're honoring the body's design instead of fighting it with blankets or fans or ice packs. Researchers still wonder if other small rituals, like warm foot baths or heated slippers, might act as sleep inducers simply by tricking the body into beginning that temperature descent. Not because the feet themselves matter most, but because they're the doorway to everything else. You close your eyes for a moment. You can still feel the warmth around your ankles. It pulses faintly, like a memory of the day being stored somewhere safe. You wonder how many sleep problems could be softened by small acts like this. Not new supplements, not apps or trackers, just listening to what the body has been asking for all along. You remember once, as a child, being tucked into bed with thick socks after a fever. How comfort wasn't just a temperature, but a gesture. And you wonder why we stopped listening to the gestures. Why adulthood taught us to optimize instead of soothe. The room grows quieter now. The air cools another degree. Your breath deepens, not out of effort, but gravity. The socks remain, heavy and soft and gently silly, like something you'd never think to include in your sleep routine, but suddenly can't imagine being without. As you stand to leave the cottage, you notice a small sign hanging by the door. It reads, "Sleep comes faster when your feet stop worrying." You step outside. The chill greets you again, but it doesn't steal anything from you. You've already been wrapped in warmth, and you carry that with you now into the deeper part of the night. You continue down the path, feet brushing softly against the forest floor. The warmth from the cottage still lingers around your ankles, and the night hums with a kind of watchful quiet. But not a perfect quiet, not silence. There's wind in the trees, a slow, rhythmic sway like waves brushing against the sky. Somewhere nearby, a distant owl calls once and then goes still. You can hear your own breathing, and underneath it all, a low, unplaceable murmur, like the world is whispering to itself. You stop walking, just to listen. And in that pause, a strange realization settles into you. You've never really known true silence, not the kind that some sleep guides promise, the absolute featureless kind. No white noise, no fans, no distant cars, just void, just nothing. It sounds peaceful, doesn't it? Ideal. You've heard it many times. Sleep best in a completely silent room. But there's something off about that advice. Something too clinical, too artificial, because the earth doesn't sleep in silence. And maybe, neither should you. A quietly fascinating fact. In studies where people are placed in anechoic chambers, rooms designed to block all sound, most report discomfort, anxiety, even hallucinations after just a short time. The absence of noise doesn't calm the brain, it disturbs it. The silence becomes a kind of noise itself, an oppressive pressure. You take a few steps forward, and the forest seems to breathe with you. Not loudly, but constantly. There's a reason for this. Your brain evolved to monitor ambient sound as a way to detect danger while resting. It's an ancient vigilance system. The sound of wind, of water, of fire, of insects and distant animals. These cues reassured the sleeping brain, nothing is wrong. Perfect silence, on the other hand, can trigger alertness. Why is it so quiet? Your nervous system asks. What's hiding in the stillness? You reach a clearing where wind chimes hang from tree branches. They're barely moving, just a soft metallic click now and then, like punctuation in a poem. You remember hotel rooms or guest houses where the silence was so thick it felt unnatural. The way your ears strained to hear something, anything, and how hard it was to fall asleep there. Not because you were stressed, but because you were waiting. Here's the eerie part. A recent study found that white noise, nature sounds, and even low-volume ambient music can improve sleep onset. Not by relaxing the body, but by masking the micro-alertness caused by unnatural silence. It creates a kind of acoustic camouflage, a signal to the brain. You don't have to be on watch right now. You sit beneath the chimes, your back against a tree. The ground is cool, the bark is rough behind you. But there's a comfort here, a rightness. You're surrounded by texture, sound, life. And you start to wonder how many people are losing sleep because they're chasing purity instead of peace. The bedroom, once a place of dreams, has become a sterile chamber, noise-blocking curtains, soundproof foam, earplugs, apps that promise pure silence like it's a luxury item. But silence is not natural, and sleep is not a performance. You close your eyes and imagine the sleeping spaces of your ancestors. Caves, tents, huts, always with the fire crackling, always with the murmur of insects and nearby voices. They didn't remove sound. They lived within it. Researchers still debate whether certain frequencies, like the low hum of rain or the gentle rustling of leaves, tap into a neurological memory, something stored deep in the primitive brain, a memory of belonging, of safe surroundings. You tilt your head and hear the forest again, and this time it doesn't feel noisy. It feels like a lullaby, not composed, not intentional, just there. You wonder how many insomniacs lie awake, blaming their minds when all they need is a hum, a soft, meaningless sound to hold on to. Something that says, "It's okay, keep sleeping, I'll listen for you." Because that's what noise really is, at its best. A watcher, a substitute sentinel for the body that no longer needs to guard itself. You rise slowly and walk back into the trail. A breeze lifts your hair. It doesn't break the spell, it deepens it. A reminder that you are part of the soundscape too, that your breathing adds to it, that your footsteps don't disturb anything. The moon seems brighter now, reflecting off the leaves like silver dust. You wonder what silence really means, if even the stars are still humming. You pass a crooked wooden sign nailed to a tree. It says, "You don't need silence, you need stillness." And you believe it. You believe it in your chest, in your fingertips, in the soft hum of your own nervous system, no longer resisting noise, but folding gently into it. Sleep isn't a prison of silence. It's a conversation with the dark. And tonight, the dark is speaking softly. The path begins to bend again, not sharply, but in a long, deliberate curve that seems to pull you towards something familiar. You feel it before you see it, a faint glow, bluish and cold, resting low on the horizon like a distant campfire someone forgot to put out. You follow it, quietly, curious, cautious. And then, beneath a mossy arch of stone and branches, you find it. A small clearing with a glowing screen resting in the center, upright alone, gently pulsing. It could be a phone, a tablet, a memory. You approach slowly, drawn by its light like a moth. This is the part of the story where the warning bells usually ring, where the lecture begins. You've heard it many times. Don't look at screens before bed. Blame the blue light. Blame the stimulation. Blame the algorithms. And in some ways, it's true. Blue light, especially the kind emitted from phones and tablets, has been shown to suppress melatonin, the hormone that helps guide you into sleep. That's why you're told to shut everything off an hour before bed. Why your phone has a night mode now. Why some people wear amber glasses indoors like they're protecting themselves from a soft apocalypse. But like most things in sleep science, the truth is more layered. A quietly fascinating fact. Blue light's effect on melatonin is real, but small, and highly dependent on context. Bright overhead LEDs or outdoor floodlights may suppress melatonin more than your phone screen. And if the content you're consuming on that screen is calming, familiar, or emotionally soothing, it might help you sleep better, not worse. You sit cross-legged in front of the screen now. It doesn't speak. It doesn't scroll. It just glows, reflecting faintly in your eyes like moonlight on water. You remember the nights you stayed up too late watching something quiet. Not doom scrolling, not checking emails, but rewatching a comfort show, listening to a soft voice on a podcast, watching a video just like this one. And even though you were breaking the rules, you felt safe. You felt softer. You slept. So why the fear? You trace your fingers through the glow and realize, maybe it's not about the light. Maybe it's about the relationship. The eerie detail here is that screen time is not a uniform behavior, and yet we treat it like one. As if texting, watching horror movies, reading the news, and listening to rain sounds are all equally disruptive. But the body responds differently to each. It's not just about brightness, it's about arousal. Are you watching something that makes your nervous system tighten, or something that helps it exhale? That's the question the data can't always answer. Researchers still wonder if contextual media use, things like low-light, emotionally regulated screen time, should be categorized separately from other digital behaviors. But the science moves slowly, and the fear moved fast. You pick up the screen. It feels light in your hands, less like a threat, more like a mirror. And in the reflection, you see your own routines. How often you blame your sleep problems on the device instead of the things you invite through it. It's easy to make the phone the villain. Easier than asking what you're avoiding, what emotions you're scrolling past, what silence you're afraid to meet. But tonight, you're not afraid. You hold the screen gently, and you remember that not long ago, we gathered around glowing light every night. Candles, lanterns, fireplaces. They were our storytellers, our comfort, our signals that it was time to rest. Maybe the screen is just a modern hearth, and like any fire, it depends on how you use it. You set it down, slowly let it fade. The light dims, but something in you stays lit. You realize the problem was never the glow. It was the guilt, the belief that you were doing sleep wrong, that your body was weak, that you needed rules to stay afloat. But you don't. You only need patterns that are kind and rhythms that belong to you. Outside the clearing, the night has shifted again. The stars pulse brighter. The trees sway more slowly. The path ahead is darker, but not unwelcoming. You take one last look at the screen. It no longer feels like an enemy. It feels like a tool, like a voice that says, "I'll stay with you a little longer if you need." And some nights, you do. The path narrows now, not dangerously, just enough to bring the trees closer, their leaves whispering in threads above your head. Each step feels lighter, more certain. And yet, a quiet unease creeps in, like an old idea trailing behind you. It's the idea that you haven't been getting enough sleep, that you're behind, failing, damaging yourself in the dark. 8 hours. That's what they say. Every night. Non-negotiable. Anything less, and you're stacking up debt, right? But here in this dreamlike forest, where time melts at the edges, that number begins to feel arbitrary, mechanical, strange. Because in truth, the idea that humans are wired for one interrupted 8-hour block of sleep every night is a very modern invention. A product of the industrial age, of clocks, of work schedules. A quietly fascinating fact, in pre-industrial societies, and even in written accounts from as late as the 17th century, people didn't sleep in one long stretch. They had first sleep and second sleep. They would drift off after dusk, wake in the middle of the night, pray, write, make love, sometimes even visit neighbors, then go back to bed for the second half. That space between was called the watch, and no one thought it was abnormal. But now, if you wake at 3 a.m., you're told something is wrong. Your cortisol's too high, your sleep cycle is broken, your phone ruined your REM. Maybe that's true, but maybe you're just built for something older, something softer. The eerie detail, when researchers took modern people and removed artificial light, their sleep patterns naturally reverted to this segmented rhythm. A few hours of deep sleep, an hour or two of quiet wakefulness, then more sleep until dawn, like the body remembered. You pause under an archway of trees, their branches forming a kind of cradle overhead. A place where waking and sleeping no longer need to argue. A place where a break in the night doesn't feel like failure, just transition. What if your 3 a.m. awakenings weren't a problem? but an invitation to write, to think, to stretch, to stare at the ceiling without pressure, or just to be. You move slowly through the thoughts, let them wrap around you. This whole notion that 8 uninterrupted hours is the gold standard has created a quiet epidemic of shame. People lying in bed, rigid with worry, checking the clock, counting backward, dreading the alarm, trying harder and harder to force themselves unconscious. And ironically, that very effort may be what's keeping them awake. Because sleep isn't obedient. It's not a vending machine where you input hours and expect output. It's more like a tide, one that comes when you make space, but cannot be summoned on command. Researchers still wonder why some people seem to thrive on 6 hours, while others can't function without 9. Genetics play a role. So does age. So do life conditions, grief, growth, trauma. But the myth of 8 hours flattens all of that, turns sleep into a measurement, a scoreboard. You find a clearing again, this one dimly lit by fireflies. Each little light pulses in its own rhythm, none of them syncing, none of them trying to. It's beautiful, chaotic, alive. You lie back in the grass and realize, maybe your sleep doesn't have to be like theirs. Maybe it doesn't have to be normal. It just has to be restorative. Sleep doesn't need to impress anyone. It just needs to heal. You close your eyes briefly, not to sleep, but to notice. Your breath unmeasured. The way your body feels when it's not being judged for needing rest in strange patterns. The quiet defiance of rejecting a rule that never quite fit you. And maybe tonight, when you wake for no reason, you won't panic, you'll just smile. Because now you know, you're not broken. You're just remembering something ancient, something true. The forest breathes around you. The lights flicker on and off. The path continues, and so do you. Not toward perfection, but toward peace. You step forward, deeper into the dream forest. The lights have dimmed, not from any sunset or storm, but as if the trees themselves understand what comes next. A hush, like the space between notes in a song. And here, under these branches shaped like folded wings, you start to wonder, why do some people bloom at midnight? You've heard it before, maybe even said it. I'm just a night owl. It sounds innocent, personal, like a quirky badge you wear. But there's a strange assumption buried underneath, that this is who you are, and nothing can change it. Science, however, doesn't whisper so clearly, because while circadian rhythms do vary, and some people are more alert in the evening than others, the idea that you're permanently wired to function best at 2 a.m. may not be a biological truth, but a learned adaptation. A quietly fascinating fact. In traditional hunter-gatherer tribes, there's no such thing as a fixed night owl or early bird identity. People shift their wake-sleep cycles seasonally, communally, and based on need. Foraging, childcare, storytelling, danger. In those cultures, flexibility is survival. Rigidity is rare. So where does this modern night owl identity come from? Some researchers believe it's not your brain that made you stay up late. It's your habits, your environment, your resistance. Late nights feel safe. They belong to no one else. That eerie quiet, no texts, no demands, no noise, feels like freedom. And so you learn to come alive in it. Not because your genes told you to, but because your days never belonged to you. And that's where the story twists. The eerie detail. Many self-identified night owls show signs of social jet lag, a chronic mismatch between their natural rhythm and societal schedules. This internal dissonance can cause fatigue, irritability, even depression. And yet, the longer you live by the night, the more your biology adapts, until staying up becomes more than preference. it becomes a trap. You stop in front of a mirror-like pool. The reflection isn't perfect. It wavers, as if time moves differently here. You see yourself, tired, wide-eyed, scrolling in the dark. Not because you're truly awake, but because sleep feels like surrender. There's something lonely in that, isn't there? This secret war against the morning. This fragile kingdom of midnight where you finally feel okay. But what if being a night owl is not who you are, just how you've coped? What if the late night alertness is a side effect of a life lived in overstimulation? A study once found that people exposed to bright artificial light after sunset, the kind in phones, laptops, and city streets, produce melatonin up to 2 hours later than usual. Their brains don't feel nighttime anymore, so they stay up. And slowly, they start believing that's natural. It's not shameful, it's just distorted. Like trying to hear the ocean through a closed window. You walk a little farther. The moon now filters through in soft, diluted fragments, like milk spilled across black velvet. It's not about guilt. You're not doing anything wrong. But researchers still debate this. If you took away the artificial light, the always-on culture, the mental load, would night owls revert back to softer rhythms? Would they wake with the sun again? No one knows for sure, but many who try it report something strange. The mornings stop feeling violent, and the nights stop feeling like a necessary escape. You breathe in the damp air. You imagine your brain not as a rigid clock, but a tide pool, capable of change, of soft rewiring. There's no fixed setting in you, only patterns, and patterns can shift. The owl isn't trapped in the night, it just learned to fly there. And so can you. Maybe not all at once, maybe not even by choice, but slowly, like dawn leaking under the door. You reach the edge of the clearing now. A soft breeze moves your hair like fingers through pages. The forest doesn't care what hour you sleep. It just wants you to rest. Not because you've earned it, but because you exist. And so whether you find rest in the hush of night or the quiet of morning, maybe the real truth isn't about when you sleep. It's about letting go of the story that told you it had to be this way, because you are not a machine. You're a creature of light and silence and change. And tonight, that change has already begun. The trail you follow now has softened underfoot. Moss and soil, the texture of sleep itself. Trees lean closer, as if listening. And just ahead, a clearing opens. Not bright, not harsh, but gently diffused, like the inside of a memory. You lie down on a low hill here, arms folded behind your head. Your eyes find the clouds. You've heard the advice before. Nap when you're tired. Just close your eyes. Drift. But it's never been that simple for you, has it? Maybe you've tried to nap, only to feel groggier than before. Maybe your mind spirals the moment it meets quiet. Maybe you've told yourself you're just bad at it. Here's something quietly fascinating. The ability to nap and feel restored by it has almost nothing to do with willpower or even sleepiness. It has everything to do with timing, brain state, and body temperature. You're not bad at napping. You're just out of sync. There's an eerie little truth buried in sleep science, one that still surprises researchers. There's a natural dip in alertness between 1 and 3 p.m. in most human bodies, regardless of culture or diet. This window, the so-called post-lunch dip, isn't about digestion. It's built into your circadian rhythm. In cultures that allow for it, the siesta traditions, the midday hush of warmer countries, people nap during this dip, briefly, without guilt, without caffeine, and they often wake feeling clearer, lighter, more human. But in places where productivity is king, you're taught to push through, to override your body. So when you finally try to nap in a spare hour at 6 p.m. or late on a Sunday, your rhythm doesn't align. Your core body temperature may already be rising. Your cortisol may already be preparing for the evening. And so when you lie down, your brain resists. It isn't that you can't nap, it's that you missed the window. You close your eyes now, just for a moment, and in the quiet, a memory returns. Maybe childhood, a blanket on the floor, afternoon sunlight filtering in strips through blinds, someone speaking softly from another room. You didn't think about trying to nap, you just did. That's the mismatch modern life creates. It gives you naps only when there's time, not when there's rhythm. Even 5 minutes of shut-eye, if caught in that right biological window, can restore more clarity than 30 minutes forced at the wrong hour. There's also this. For some people, the inability to nap isn't physical, it's psychological. You may lie down, but your mind does not. Because to sleep is to let go, and some days that's harder than others. There's a term used in trauma research, hypervigilance, a state of constant alertness, always scanning, always preparing. Sometimes it becomes so normalized you don't even recognize it as tension. You just call it not being able to relax. And naps, these little surrenders in the middle of a day, feel impossible. But researchers still debate this too. Can you train yourself back into the art of napping? Or is it something you can only reclaim once the world feels safe again? The science doesn't offer a neat answer, but stories do. Like the patients recovering from burnout who begin by napping in pairs, not romantically, just together. A nap buddy, they call it. A shared softness. Or the trauma survivors who keep weighted blankets and soothing scents, creating small rituals of safety before even closing their eyes. You imagine for a moment what that might look like for you. Not forcing sleep, but inviting it. A darkened room, a gentle sound, the kind of quiet that doesn't feel empty, but held. Because maybe naps aren't about stopping. Maybe they're about restarting. You look again at the sky. It's changing now. Blue melting into lavender. The forest doesn't sleep all at once. Some animals are waking now. Some are nesting. It's a dance, not a rule. Your body too has its own rhythms. Not broken, not lazy, just different. And maybe tonight you start to believe that. Maybe naps aren't for other people. Maybe they're not a sign of weakness or a stolen pleasure. Maybe they're just a breath, a bridge between moments, like this one. Because rest in all its forms is a conversation, and sometimes your body speaks in silence. So if you've ever felt like you failed at sleep in the middle of the day, remember, you weren't wrong, just misaligned. And alignment is something you can always find your way back to. Even now, even here. A breeze passes. You feel the weight of your limbs soften, like roots touching soil. There's nothing to resist, nothing to prove. You're not bad at napping, you're just still remembering how. The light has shifted again, more golden now, slanting through trees with a softness that makes even the shadows feel safe. You walk along the forest's edge, brushing past quiet branches, your footsteps muffled in pine needles and earth. You're thinking, maybe, about all the mornings you've woken up tired, despite the hours you logged, despite the long sleep-ins on the weekends, despite the extra sleep you thought would make things better. It didn't always help, did it? That groggy, weighted feeling still clung to you, like your body had been underwater too long, as if you had slept too hard. And here's the strange truth. You can't actually catch up on sleep the way we're taught to believe. Not completely, not in the ways that matter most. Sleep isn't a savings account. You can't overdraw during the week and expect one long deposit on Sunday morning to fix it. Sleep debt, as it's often called, is real, but it's not linear. One quietly fascinating discovery from the University of Pennsylvania found that people who slept only 6 hours a night for 2 weeks, just 6, performed as poorly on cognitive tests as people who had been awake for 2 full days. And here's the eerie part. They didn't even realize it. They thought they were doing fine. Sleep loss dulls your awareness of sleep loss. And the myth that you can catch up by sleeping in longer on the weekends? It's only partly true. Yes, your body will take some recovery sleep, a bit more deep sleep here, a bit more REM there. But the architecture of sleep, the delicate unfolding of cycles, the hormonal balance, the repair processes, doesn't just snap back into place. Think of it more like a garden. You can't neglect it all week and expect one long afternoon of watering to undo the damage. Sleep thrives on rhythm, and rhythms don't like disruption, even disruption with good intentions. Oversleeping, especially on weekends, can actually throw off your internal clock more. That's why people often feel worse after catch-up sleep. More disoriented, more foggy, more anxious on Sunday night. You pause by a tree, pressing your palm to its bark. The rings inside it mark seasons, not days. And perhaps your sleep is like that too. Not just about how long, but how well, and how predictably. But researchers still debate how much sleep debt is recoverable and how much causes lasting changes in the brain. Some studies suggest that prolonged deprivation leads to subtle cognitive impairments, changes in memory, mood regulation, even immune function, that can't be fully undone, even with months of good sleep later on. Others hold out hope. They believe in neuroplasticity, in healing, in the idea that rest, when consistent and gentle, can still restore what we've dulled. You sit now by a small stream. Its waters move slowly, deliberately, like thought itself. You reach down and touch the surface. Cold, but inviting. It reminds you that rest isn't always about stillness. Sometimes it's about flowing, about returning to a pace that matches your nature. There's an eerie little phenomenon sleep scientists call social jet lag. It happens when your weekday sleep and weekend sleep differ by more than an hour. Your body feels like it's changed time zones without ever leaving home. And this jet lag doesn't just cause grogginess. It's been linked to increased risk of depression, weight gain, even metabolic disorders, all from a few mismatched hours. So no, you can't catch up. Not exactly. But you can realign. One quiet suggestion from chronobiology experts: wake up at the same time every day, even weekends. If you need more sleep, go to bed earlier, but anchor the morning. This resets your circadian rhythm gently, like tuning a quiet instrument. Over days, even weeks, you'll notice it. Less resistance to sleep, fewer crashes, more clarity. It won't feel instant. Nothing about real rest ever does, but it builds. And maybe you don't need 10 hours to feel whole. Maybe you just need 7, given at the right hour, wrapped in peace and repeated with care. You stretch your legs out. The stream continues beside you, oblivious to hours. And you wonder, what would it be like to let your sleep be shaped by light again, not by schedules? To go to bed when your eyelids truly soften, not when the clock blinks past midnight in blue digits. To rise with slow breath and no alarm. To forget the language of catching up as if rest were a race. You close your eyes now just for a breath, and in that breath you begin again. No debts, no deficits, just rhythm, like the tide returning to shore. There's a quiet tension in the air tonight. You walk through it slowly, as though moving through mist. The sky is still, but your thoughts are not. They curl around you like smoke. Not dangerous, but dense. You've heard it before, haven't you? That well-meaning advice, whispered or spoken. Just clear your mind. Let it go. Think of nothing, as if it were a light switch, as if your mind were a blank room you could empty with a breath. But the harder you try to think of nothing, the louder something becomes. A memory, a regret, the flicker of a task left undone. This is the paradox. Trying to suppress a thought often makes it come back stronger. Psychologists have studied this for decades. One famous experiment asked participants not to think of a white bear, and yet they thought about white bears more than ever. It's called the ironic process theory, a quiet rebellion of the mind. When you try too hard to suppress a thought, part of your brain keeps scanning for it, checking to see if the suppression is working, which, ironically, brings the thought back. You step over a stone path now, surrounded by fog. There's a hum in the distance, something mechanical and low, like a fan in the next room. Familiar, comforting. And you think, maybe the goal was never to clear the mind completely. Maybe it's just about giving it softer things to hold. Something slow, something cool and textured, like the smoothness of a river stone, or the repetition of breath in your chest, rising and falling like a small, careful tide. There's a quietly fascinating insight from neuroscience here. The brain's default mode network, the part that activates during rest, is never truly still. Even when you lie quietly, your mind continues its silent rehearsals. It wanders, it loops, it revisits old scenes. This is not dysfunction. It's how the brain maintains your sense of self. So maybe it's not about silencing thoughts. Maybe it's about redirecting them, gently. One method researchers recommend is called cognitive diffusion. You don't block the thought, you watch it, like a cloud passing. You say to yourself, I'm having the thought that I forgot something. And in that phrasing, you soften it. You create space between you and the thought. You become an observer, not a hostage. You turn a corner now into a grove of soft grass. There's a bench here, worn and old, the wood curved smooth from years of visitors. You sit, not to do anything, just to be. You listen to the nighttime language, leaves shifting slightly, distant water, a bird that only calls once, and you notice your thoughts are still here, but they're quieter now, less demanding, like children who no longer need your full attention, but still want to be close. Researchers still wonder, why does distraction work better than suppression? Why does simply thinking about something else help so much more than trying to think of nothing? One theory is that distraction uses different neural pathways, areas of the brain linked to imagination or sensory engagement. Suppression, on the other hand, keeps you locked in a feedback loop. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. The pressure builds. But if you let it float beside you, the effort disappears. So instead of clearing your mind, what if you filled it with low clouds, with wind through pine needles, with the memory of warm sheets and distant thunder? What if your mind became a dreamscape, not blank but blurry, not silent but soft? That might be all you need. You lie down now in the grass. It's dry but cool. Your head tilts toward the stars, or what might be stars. They shimmer faintly behind drifting haze, and you imagine your thoughts like those lights, each one tiny, flickering, far away. You don't chase them. You just let them exist. Not every thought is a signal. Not every flicker needs meaning. And somewhere in this non-effort, you rest. Not because you fought for peace, but because you stopped trying to. That's the strange kindness of the mind. It only relaxes when it knows you aren't watching too closely. So you breathe and let yourself blur. Not empty, just untroubled. The room around you has grown a shade darker. Not ominous, just deeper, like dusk settling in after the gold of a fading day. You lie there, still and slow, and think about all the rules you've heard. No screens before bed, no blue light after 9, no technology, no scrolling, no stimulation. And maybe some of that holds truth. But tonight, we peel it back, because the panic around blue light, the villain of sleep hygiene, is more complicated than it first appears. Yes, your phone emits blue wavelengths. And yes, those wavelengths can suppress melatonin, the hormone that tells your body it's time to sleep. But here's the strange twist. Blue light is also the color of morning. It's the wavelength that tells your brain the sun has risen, that it's time to be alert, to focus, to live. So the concern isn't about blue light existing. It's about when and how much. And here's the quietly fascinating fact. The blue light from your screen is nowhere near as intense as the natural blue light you get from being outside during the day. A single hour outdoors, even on a cloudy day, gives you more circadian input than several hours on your phone. Yet many of us barely go outside. We shield ourselves from real light, and then blame the artificial kind for ruining our sleep. You walk now through a corridor of trees, their trunks tall and smooth like columns. Somewhere above, there's moonlight, but down here, it's all shadows and hush. Your feet move without sound, and you think about all the little warnings we collect, tips and tricks, advice passed from article to article, and how few of them offer context. The blue light panic started around 2010, when early studies showed that screens at night could delay sleep. But what those studies often didn't mention was the environment, the brightness settings, the content being consumed, the person's existing habits. Because yes, doom scrolling news at 1 a.m. is probably not ideal, but replying to a calm message from someone you love, reading a slow story in a dimmed app, that might not destroy your sleep at all. Researchers still debate, is it the light itself or the way we engage with it? One theory suggests it's more about cognitive arousal than melatonin suppression. Not the light, but the alertness. Think about it. If you read a gentle book on a tablet in low light, and your body is relaxed, your mind unbothered, your brain may interpret the experience very differently from watching a fast-cut video or scrolling through dramatic posts. So maybe it's not the screen. Maybe it's the energy you bring to it. You pause near a quiet pool now. Its surface is undisturbed. You can see your reflection only barely, and the stars above it shimmer like scattered thoughts. Another detail you may find eerie. Some insomniacs sleep better with screens nearby. There are studies showing that for people with anxiety, having access to calming media, soft sounds, quiet visuals, creates a sense of safety. The blue light becomes secondary to the soothing ritual. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many things we label bad are only bad in excess, or only bad when used to avoid the real root? You settle on a stone bench, its surface cold but familiar. And you imagine all the people right now in this very hour, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4, staring into screens because they can't sleep. Not because of the screen, but because of what's happening behind it. The mind needs comfort, and sometimes comfort comes in pixels, softly lit. A video like this, a voice like this. You think about your own rituals, the way you hold your phone at a certain angle, the way your thumb swipes almost rhythmically, like turning pages. It's not always restlessness. Sometimes it's just searching. And you realize the advice wasn't wrong, just incomplete. Yes, blue light can disrupt your rhythms, but so can fear, so can loneliness, so can an overzealous checklist of sleep hygiene that forgets you are human, not a machine. So tonight, instead of fearing the light, you soften it. You lower the brightness. You let the screen become background, not center stage. You let your body lead, not the clock. You listen to the weight in your limbs. You notice you're blinking slow. And maybe, just maybe, you close your eyes not out of obedience, but out of trust. That sleep comes not through perfection, but through peace. The grass beneath you softens as you walk. It's not quite a meadow, but something close, tall and unrushed, whispering with each small breeze. The air is cooler now, like the inside of a thought you haven't quite named. And you're thinking about all the rules again, all the things you're told to fix. Cut the caffeine, no naps after 3. Get out of bed if you can't sleep in 20 minutes. And the most whispered advice of all, don't try too hard. You've probably heard this one. That sleep is like a cat. It comes only when you stop calling for it. But there's something else underneath that metaphor. Something a little heavier. Because for many people, the pursuit of better sleep becomes a source of anxiety in itself. A tight loop of monitoring, optimizing, tracking, adjusting, until the bedtime routine becomes a second job. And the more you worry, the more elusive the rest becomes. Here's the quietly fascinating fact tonight. People who don't worry about sleep often sleep better. It's called sleep effort, and in psychology, it's one of the biggest paradoxes in insomnia. The more effort you put into making yourself sleep, the less naturally it happens. It's not laziness or willpower. It's the way the brain works under pressure. Sleep is a passive process, a nervous system slipping into quiet coordination. When you push, it resists. So some researchers now suggest that the key isn't more control, but less concern. They've studied people with similar sleep patterns, same number of hours, same wake-ups, but different reactions. One group is distressed, the other, unbothered. And the unbothered ones feel more rested, report less fatigue, and perform better on attention tests. You walk past an old sundial now. It's cracked down the middle, no longer keeping time, just resting in the grass. And maybe that's the lesson. Letting go of the pressure to perform sleep perfectly. You pause and recall an eerie historical detail. In medieval Europe, people slept in 2 distinct segments. They'd go to bed just after dusk, sleep for a few hours, then wake in the middle of the night for an hour or 2 to talk, think, pray, or write. Then they'd return to bed until dawn. This was considered normal. No anxiety. No, I must fall back asleep right away. Just a different rhythm, shaped by candlelight and silence. But in the modern world, we treat any deviation from continuous 7-8 hours as a failure. And so we overcorrect. We buy gadgets. We chase supplements. We scroll advice threads at 2 a.m. and feel like we're falling behind. But what if you didn't have to fix everything? What if your body already knew how to rest and just needed space? There's a school of therapy called ACT, Acceptance and Commitment Therapy, that applies this thinking. Instead of challenging every unhelpful sleep thought, ACT teaches you to observe it and let it pass. I'm not sleeping well tonight becomes a weather pattern, not a catastrophe, not a judgment, just a passing cloud. You reach a clearing now, and overhead the sky ripples with stars. Not dramatic, just present, like they always were. And you think about that feeling when you finally fall asleep, not because you tried, but because you forgot you were supposed to. Maybe the most powerful shift isn't in your bedroom setup, but in your mindset about tiredness. Instead of fearing the next day, what if you trusted your body to adapt? Because it will. It does. You've survived every sleepless night so far. Researchers still wonder why some people seem more vulnerable to sleep-related anxiety. Genetics, personality, life experience? There's no single answer, but the solution often involves gentle exposure. Doing less, not more. Turning sleep into a background hum, not a performance. You lie down in the grass now, not to nap, just to feel the earth hold you. You look up at the sky and think, maybe this is enough. This moment, this breath. No pressure, no fix, just rest. In whatever shape it takes. You're still in that soft clearing, a kind of nowhere that asks nothing from you. The stars remain suspended above, and everything is slower now. You can feel it in your breathing. A little longer on the exhale, a little softer with each inhale. And now we drift into something stranger. Not stranger in the wild sense, but stranger in the quiet, science doesn't fully get it yet kind of way. Something you might call placebo sleep. Yes, placebo sleep is real. In fact, it might be one of the most mysterious findings in sleep science. Here's your quietly fascinating fact for tonight. People told they slept well, even when they didn't, actually performed better the next day. Sharper attention, better mood, higher cognitive scores. The experiment was simple. Researchers hooked participants to EEG machines overnight. Some slept well, others didn't. But in the morning, they were given false feedback. Some were told, you had great deep sleep. Others were told the opposite, regardless of the truth. And just like that, those who believed they'd slept well functioned as if they had. It wasn't a minor difference either. Reaction times, memory recall, even emotional regulation improved, all because of a sentence, an expectation. You walk a little now, brushing past silvery blue weeds that glow faintly like moonlight caught on metal. So what does this mean? That belief can override biology? That you don't need sleep, just the idea of it? Not quite, but it does suggest something deep about perception. How your experience of rest, not just the sleep itself, shapes your day. It also introduces an eerie contradiction. Some of the most sleep-deprived people feel fine, while others, technically well-rested, feel exhausted. The mind's narrative trumps the data, and this has real-world implications. Sleep trackers, for example, can sometimes backfire. They might tell you that you didn't sleep deeply, even if you feel okay, and suddenly you don't feel okay anymore. It's called orthosomnia, a term coined for sleep anxiety caused by overtracking sleep. A strange spiral, right? You feel rested, you check your data, you doubt yourself, you feel worse. That doubt seeps into your body. It's like checking your reflection too many times and forgetting what you actually look like. You pause beneath a tree with bark like folded paper. It's shedding gently, layer by layer, like sleep expectations, maybe. Like beliefs softening in the night. So what can you do with this information? Not fake sleep, exactly. But maybe lean into the feeling of rest. Even when sleep is elusive, let your body practice softness. Because here's the truth. Quiet wakefulness still restores you. The brain may not be in full sleep mode, but when you lie still, muscles relaxed, eyes closed, heart rate slowed, your nervous system gets a break. And that break matters. We often underestimate that. We say, I didn't sleep at all, when really, we hovered in and out. Twilight zones of semi-rest that still count for something. Researchers still debate the full power of placebo sleep. Some believe it could help treat insomnia. Others worry it's unethical to trick people. But maybe it's not about trickery. Maybe it's about permission. To stop obsessing. To trust that your body knows more than your tracking app. To remember that how you feel is valid, even if it can't be graphed. You settle again, not to do anything, just to exist. And as you exhale, maybe you imagine telling yourself, last night was restful. Even if it wasn't perfect, even if you're not sure, it's not a lie. It's an invitation, a gentle placebo that lets your nervous system unclench. That says, you are okay, you have enough, you can move through the day slower if needed, but intact. The stars above haven't shifted. The earth hasn't asked for proof, and neither should you. There's a hush in the clearing now. The wind doesn't move. Even the stars seem quieter, as if they've paused their twinkling just to listen. You've heard a lot tonight. Stories, studies, strange facts. But now, here at the edge of sleep, we come to something subtle. A truth that hums beneath it all. Not every sleep tip is helpful. In fact, some advice, when repeated too often, starts to whisper in the wrong way. Let's start with the quietly fascinating fact. People who believe sleep is fragile, that it must be perfect, often sleep worse. It's called sleep perfectionism, a growing phenomenon. And ironically, it's being fed by the flood of wellness content and advice designed to help. You know the lines. Get exactly 8 hours. Stop looking at screens 90 minutes before bed. Never eat after 7 p.m. Wake up and sleep at the same time every day. Your bedroom should be a perfect cave, cold, dark, silent. They sound logical, and for some people, they work. But when you internalize these rules too deeply, they can backfire. Because sleep doesn't like to be controlled. It's not a machine. It's a wild biological rhythm. And trying to hack it like an algorithm might be the very thing that breaks it. There's an eerie little experiment from 2020. Researchers studied 2 groups of people with insomnia. Both were given information about sleep. But one group received rigid golden rules, while the other group was told, sleep is flexible. Everyone has bad nights. Trust your body. Guess which group improved? Not the one who followed strict rules, but the ones who were told to relax the rules. It's not about being lazy, it's about reducing sleep-related anxiety. Because sleep is paradoxical. The harder you try to force it, the more it resists. You think, I need to fall asleep now or tomorrow will be a disaster. Your body hears danger, stress hormones rise, and sleep slips further away. You might have done this before, glancing at the clock at 3:17 a.m., doing the math. If I fall asleep right now, I'll get 3 hours and 43 minutes. But that math doesn't help. It tightens something inside you. You walk again, soft steps, slow, each footfall like a quiet breath. Maybe you pass by a stone that hums faintly, or a moth the size of your palm, gently clinging to a reed. You don't need to explain it, you're just noticing. Sleep doesn't need perfection, it needs permission. To arrive how it wants, to ebb and flow, to sometimes be restless, and that's okay. But in the age of optimization, where your mattress tracks your movements, your smartwatch scores your REM, and apps beep if your room's too bright, it's easy to forget that. Sleep becomes a project, a performance, and worst of all, something to fear when it's imperfect. That's the danger of over-advising. Too many shoulds, and your nervous system starts to brace. You become the watcher, not the dreamer. Researchers still wonder, where's the line between helpful routine and harmful obsession? When does structure turn to stress? It's not clear. But one suggestion stands out. Instead of aiming for perfect sleep, aim for gentle evenings. Evenings without judgment, without a checklist. Just soft moments that say, "You've done enough. Come rest now." That could be warm tea in silence, or brushing your hair slowly, or listening to the same quiet song every night until it becomes a lullaby. Whatever soothes you without needing to work, because your body remembers. It knows how to sleep. You've done it since the womb. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is get out of the way, to stop managing every variable and simply allow the fog to roll in. And now that fog is here. You feel it in the space behind your eyes, in the way your limbs soften. Not asleep yet, but not quite awake either. And here at the edge of tonight's story, we let go. Let go of the perfect bedtime. Let go of what time it is. Let go of whether tomorrow will be productive. Because rest is not the reward for doing everything right. It's the right itself. And now, as we slow down together, you lie down if you weren't already, and the world folds itself gently around you. Everything slows. Thoughts drift like clouds that no longer need to be named. You don't have to try anymore. There's nothing to fix. No more advice to follow. Just this rhythm, this breath, this soft gravity pulling you towards stillness. You might think about some of the things you heard tonight, but they don't need to be held. Let them pass like echoes. You don't need to remember every fact or every phrase. Your body already knows what to do. In the distance, a low hum, maybe a breeze, maybe a thought dissolving. Everything is quiet now. And if you're still awake, that's okay too. You're resting, you're safe. That's all for tonight. Let your mind keep floating or drift into sleep. I'll be here again next time.